Hi everybody, I'm Tim Gore. I'm really happy to welcome you to the program. We're being joined by Bill Switzer, who fought during the Vietnam War and then had a distinguished career in the Navy beyond that as well. Give the students a sense of when you joined the military. How old were you and what year was that?
Well, that was 1965 when I was 25 years old. Grew up in the hills of West Virginia. And one reason I wanted to get into aviation because I think I always wanted to be a fighter pilot, but I saw the P-51 World War II airplanes flying down between the mountains, and I looked up there and I said, that's what I want to do. So that's one thing I always focused on, and it wasn't easy, but I pursued it. And in 1965, when I graduated from college, that's when I joined the Navy.
Okay, and so obviously America is in the Vietnam conflict at that period of time. You were aware of that.
Right.
It's a war that wasn't necessarily all that popular throughout the 1960s.
No, there was a lot of pros and cons about that war. I don't think there was any clear-cut objectives about what to do, why we're over there, and a lot of mistrust with all the agencies and government and everything else. And I was ready to go to war, and so I signed up, and I was ready to go over there. But you're right, a lot of protesters about that, and there was also a lot of folks that supported the war, so it was about 50-50.
Let's give the students a little bit of a geography lesson as well. We can bring up a map of Southeast Asia, and obviously we had been involved in Vietnam for a number of years prior to this period of time. There was a communist movement, North Vietnam existed, and even under the Eisenhower administration and the early part of the Kennedy administration, advisors were going in, and by the time we get to 65 and the Johnson administration, it's a far-reaching war effort. Lots of people are there. So that gives you a little bit of geography. So let's go to some student questions right off the bat, because they want to know about why you joined the services you did and some other things about life then. So I'm going to go to Zach in Hillsborough, New Jersey. Zach, come on in. What's your question?
First, I want to say thank you for your service, and my question is, were your parents sad or proud of you entering the military, and how could you tell?
My parents weren't sad, but they were proud. Now, they were also pleased that I was pursuing a career that I always wanted, and my dad was never in the military, so I was pretty much going from the baseline right in the conflict. So, you know, they had mixed emotions about it.
Very cool. Thanks for the question very much, Zach. Let's switch now to a different place in New Jersey. Go to South Manton School in New Jersey. They want to know how you decided which branch of the military you wanted to join. Bill, why the Navy?
Well, honestly, I always wanted to be an Air Force fighter pilot. But then in 1965, I had a Navy recruiter come to the college, show us the movie on carrier aviation. And he said, guys, if you can land aboard a carrier at nighttime, 300-foot space out at sea with no divert fields, he said that separates the men from the boys. And I said, that's what I wanted to do, and never looked back.
Very, very cool. You can bring up an example of an F-8. You spent a lot of time in an F-8. Talk a little bit about the nature of these planes, Bill. How fast do they fly?
In combat in Vietnam, we were flying on a combat mission. We'd have 420-millimeter cannons and some heat-seeking Sidewinder missiles. But our speed on a mission would routinely be 450 knots to about 600, supersonic occasionally. But the top speed of the airplane was 1,000 miles an hour. But you could get that, but you wouldn't go very far because now you're out of gas. So you'd have to use afterburner to accelerate to go after the enemy. But you really had to keep your wits about you and use a lot of common sense. Say, how far can I track that guy before I run out of gas? And so it was a very maneuverable airplane, very fast, and it was just a single seat. Just Bill Switzer in the fighter plane against the enemy, and it was me against that guy.
So I'm going to go back to Hillsborough, New Jersey. Jamie, let's go to your question.
First, thank you for your service, and my question is, could you please describe what you were thinking the first time you went into combat? And
Bill?
I would say my experience in the Navy, I thought the training was superb. And I carrier qualified off the coast of Virginia. 10 days later, I'm flying combat missions by myself in Vietnam. So I felt very comfortable. And I think as a Navy fighter pilot, you got to think you're the meanest mother in the valley. Otherwise, you ought to not be in the war. If you're not the best out there, you ought to not be in the fight. So we went in there, I wouldn't say arrogance, but we had a good situation awareness about us. And I would say one of my first combat missions, went in there to knock out a bridge, but now I'm a fighter escort. And there were 4 light attack airplanes that went in, rolled in, and we have the flak coming up now. And I wasn't scared. I don't know why, but it was just the fact is, I'm gonna take the bridge out or I've got to do what I got to do. And so anyway, the 4 airplanes rolled in, light attack. Their bombs came around the bridge, but they didn't hit it. And then the lead fighter, F-8, he rolled in. His bombs didn't hit it. Now, we didn't have any precision bombs. It was just you go down to 60 degrees, nose down at about 450 knots. You drop your bombs at about 10,000 feet, and you pull out about 4,000, and you know all this flak's coming out to you. But then on the other hand, I just had that targeted right there, and sure enough, all my bombs hit right on the bridge. And the reason I got credit for it, because there's a photo aircraft that was following behind us to get imagery of what damage was done. So actually, when I was rolling in, the flak was around me, and the only thing I thought about, if I get hit in the cockpit, as long as I have my visor down, this is amazing. I just didn't want my eyes, I didn't want to go blind. But other than that, I thought about that for about 2 or 3 seconds, and then I just focused on the bridge, and that's what it was. So all the combat missions were interesting. There were a variety of them. You could have anywhere from 20 airplanes up to 60, 70 airplanes hitting multiple targets day and night. So actually, it was good training.
Wow.
Actually, I enjoyed it. But the interesting fact is about being a Navy fighter pilot, they did a study on it, and we were more calm and relaxed and controlled doing combat missions being fired at than we were coming aboard an aircraft carrier at nighttime. Because now the heart rate is really picking up, and now you're out there, no place to go. You've probably got enough fuel for 1 pass, maybe 2, and that's it. So the pucker factor was always there.
Gotcha. We got a couple of images of a couple of the aircraft carriers you served on. Am I pronouncing Oriskany correctly? Or
Oriskany.
Oriskany. And so the first image is the Oriskany, and then we've also got a picture of the Ticonderoga. These are big, kind of like cities on the sea kind of thing. Right,
and actually these carriers, they call them the 27 Charlies, are a lot smaller than the Kitty Hawk Constellation, or the carriers they have now. They're probably about 2/3 the size. So our landing area was quite smaller than what the bigger carriers had. And our complement of troops on board, sailors, it was about 3,000 folks.
Oh, wow, that's a lot of people on one ship. Let's give you an idea about what life was like on the carrier with some video we can show you right now.
Well offshore, in the deep blue of the China Sea, is the backbone of our Navy surface forces, the aircraft carrier. It's a floating mobile air base complex. Over 4,000 men live and work on this seagoing city. To keep the ship in operation and its pilots in the air requires the effort of a community of freemen, engineers, clerks, doctors, mechanics, pipe fitters, radar men, cooks, and bakers. Their working day averages 12 hours. It can be 18 or even longer when air operations are underway and planes are being sent aloft at 30-second intervals. Combat sorties over North Vietnam have been flown by Navy and Marine pilots. It's a dangerous job, and sometimes not all the planes come safely back.
How much space is there for you to take off on? And are you being basically pushed on, or is it pushed off? How's that work?
It's a steam catapult, and you accelerate from standing still to about 170 knots in about 2.5 seconds. So then once you get airborne, you're back in your seat, you got your hand on the stick, and then as soon as you get off the aircraft carrier, you do a slight clearing turn away from the carrier just in case you have an engine malfunction, then you need to eject. You're not going to eject in front of the carrier. And then you just raise the gear and lower the flaps, and you're probably up to about 200 knots in about 4 or 5 seconds.
And now you're up, and obviously you're flying from the aircraft carrier to the sea to some sort of location in Southeast Asia where you're going to either target a location or you're going to have to encounter enemy air defenses and potentially doing some jet fighter to jet fighter. We had an email question that came in. Were there North Vietnamese jets that you actually kind of like had dogfights with, that kind of thing?
Right. So once we got airborne, it could be a 25 plane raid. We call it an alpha strike. But you got a mixture of the fighters and you got a mixture of the bombers. So our mission as a fighter pilot was to protect the bombers so that they could roll in unimpeded, and that way we keep, if there's any North Vietnam aircraft out there, that we'll take them out. And also if there's flak anti-aircraft guns going after them. We'll take those out, and then for some SAM sites, we'll take the surface air missile sites out too. So pretty well orchestrated deal, and everybody trained together, and everybody, very few communications, but it was a well orchestrated attack.
Well, as you talk about a well-orchestrated attack, let's go to some footage that we had that we began to show you a little while ago, the targeting of the bombs, because we had an email question that came in also talking about, did you ever feel shock waves from the bombs you hit or anything like that? And talk about the process that you would use to target.
Okay, right here, you're rolling in probably about 15,000 feet. You got the bridge in sight, and bridges were one of our biggest target areas, so we can stop the logistics from coming south. So you roll in, like I said, about 60 degrees nose down, and put the gun sight right on the bridge, 450 knots, and it's pretty much a manual. We didn't really have a sophisticated bombing technique from the fighters, but now our medium attack aircraft, A6 Intruders, I think if you saw the movie Flight of Intruder, theirs was more sophisticated. They go day and night, low level, and their bombing accuracy was a lot better than the fighters. So you roll in, and then meanwhile, the Vietnamese weren't stupid, you know, because when you roll in on the bridge, you're getting pretty much in a predictable flight path, and now they got all their surface air missiles, they got their anti-aircraft guns already focused on you. So if you're about number 3 or 4 rolling in, they're zooming in, and they see you coming, and first 2 or 3 guys are probably pretty safe, but tail end Charlie's going to be he's going to be sweating the bullets.
Okay. Let's go to Lorain, Ohio. Miranda, let's go to your question.
Thank you both so much for your service to this country. And could you describe your motivations and what it took day to day to serve in times of war and ultimately return home?
Bill, I'll let you go to that first.
Well, actually, I guess I was motivated from the day I joined the Navy, and I guess there's a lot of luck to it. Maybe I'm weird, but I was always motivated on every mission, and I always felt like I had a positive thought about coming back, never thought I was going to die. I wouldn't say I was invincible, but on the other hand, I was always motivated to do the best I could, take the target out, kill the MiGs, whatever I had to do. I'm an extreme competitor, so I was. It was me against the enemy, and so I was pretty much motivated by doing what I had to do to take them out. I mean, that sounds morbid, but that's war.
And Bill, you continued to be a part of the Navy after the Vietnam conflict ended, and you didn't retire from the military until when?
1995, 30 years.
So thank you for that service. But between the end of the Vietnam War and then, you did a whole wide variety of things, right?
Right. I had a tour of the Blue Angels in 1971-72, and I was a commanding officer of an F-14 squadron when they made Top Gun. Actually, those were my airplanes that my pilots flew in that movie.
Oh, very cool.
That was my ready room that they used.
Uh-huh.
And then I was an air wing commander aboard an aircraft carrier, did quite a few deployments with that, and then I went to senior CAG, senior air wing commander, and I did that. And then during the Gulf War, the first one, 1991, I was the Navy planner for Admiral Kelso, the chief of naval operations, did quite a few contingency planning operations. And then my last good job, I would say, I was the operations officer for all the U.S. Navy forces in Europe in 1991 through 94, doing contingency planning for those strikes over there. So it was a good career.
Wow, and there we see you at part of your career at a slightly younger age, looking very similar. Bill,
still looking sharp.
I think so, looking very sharp. And part of what you had the experience of doing during this post-Vietnam experience was a crash as you were coming in on an aircraft carrier.
Right.
You brought with us the, I'll call it rope, the metal cable that didn't work, as it were.
This is the cable. I don't know if you can see it, but this is the cable. So when I was a commanding officer of the F-14 squadron in the Indian Ocean, came aboard in an F-14, and there's 4 cables on the ship, and this is what one of them looks like. Well, this is the one I caught, and it wasn't set to for the right resistance to catch the F-14. So all in a matter of 2.5 seconds from the time I touched down, the radar intercept officer, we knew something was not right. Everything went into slow motion. So as soon as I knew something popped in the back, wasn't sure what was going on. So I told the radar intercept officer, I said, bio, everybody's got to have a call sign. I said, bio, eject. And so he was ready to go too. So the first thing comes off is the canopy. And then as the airplane's dribbling off the side of the carrier, so I didn't have any flying speed, but I'm still trying to fly the airplane. So I heard his ejection seat fire, and then the airplane hit the water. And I said, I didn't think my seat was going to fire. So it fired either underwater or on top like a rock. So anyway, you know, I don't care what you believe in. You got to be in good shape. And if it's your time to go, you're going to go. Well, here I am for a second chance, and I don't want to screw it up again, you know.
Well, amazingly, we have footage of that from the aircraft carriers, some cameras that were on the aircraft carrier that we were able to find. So students, here is the crash that Bill just described, and Bill, feel free to talk about it as we see things happening here.
Okay, it's going to be a little fuzzy, but I'll put on my glasses so I can see that guy.
That's you coming in.
That's me coming in, and so I get the wire, slow down just a little bit where I think I'm going to stop, and then the airplane just, the cable broke, and then you're in the water. So.
And so you're ejecting as you're going into the water, or maybe you're already underwater when the ejection happens.
Right. So the airplane sort of went off, and nobody saw what happened. And the commanding officer of the aircraft carrier, you know, he was able to steer clear of us. And as you can see out there in the water, this is in the Indian Ocean. Nice swells out there, 12 to 16 foot swells. There were sea snakes out there, and we had sharks. And it would just so happen on that particular launch, the bio says, "Hey, skipper, look at all those sea snakes." And it happened to be mating season. And there's about a quarter of a mile of thousands and thousands of sea snakes intertwined with each other. So now when I come up to the top, I'm still attached to my parachute, so I got to get rid of that because it's going to be sucked down by the screws of the aircraft carrier. So then I was able to get rid of that, and so I look behind me, and up I go and averted a sea snake right behind me, and I'm thinking, oh, this is not good. So I did a 180 and turned around. Well, it wasn't a sea snake. It was about the size of my cushion, and their sea snakes are brownish green, and it happened to be my cushion.
Oh, wow.
So I thought, well, at least that was good. And next thing I know, in the water, this is in 1981, where we used to throw our trash off the ships. So what do you got? Sharks fall in the ships. Everything's incinerated now, so it's a clean, but during that time frame, we didn't have that. So anyway, the sharks are following the carriers, and I'll be daggone if they're in the shark fin in the water. And we took pictures of these guys following the task force. And sure enough, you're in a little mild state of shock. So I could hear the music Jaws, boom, 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 boom. Well, it turned out it wasn't a shark. It was the vertical fin of the airplane, of the F-14, as it was about ready to sink. So what really happened, the dial broke on the aircraft carrier, on the mechanism, and they thought everything was right when it wasn't correct. So the ejection, I survived out of that. Actually lost an inch of height when it compresses your back, and then chipped my neck, and so I was grounded for about 3 or 4 weeks. So I was very, very lucky.
Wow. I want to end by doing a series of student questions so you guys can have a chance to really ask a lot of things that were important to you. And so let's go back to Hillsborough, New Jersey. Melanie, you had a question for us. Let's go for it.
First, I would like to say thank you for your service, and my question is, how did people on the home front treat you when you returned to the USA?
And Bill, did you face, like in the Vietnam era time frame, did you face any difficulty being?
Not really. I never felt bodily harm, but I'll tell you what, we saw a lot of protesters, and whether you're liked or not, it didn't bother me. I did what I had to do, and I was proud of what I did, and I'll always be proud of it. But we did have an air show, and we did have an air show where they had a lot of protesters out there. They were flying the flag upside down and all these posters. You know, after a while, it got to me at the beginning because I lost some friends over there. But then I said, you know what, the bottom line is that's what we're in the military for. That's what our mission is, to have democracy. People want to do that. That's their right, and that's what I'm here. If I don't like it, then I ought to get out of the military, but that's what the military for, is to support the rights of the people. And let's go to Caden in Dexter, Kansas. Caden, what's your question?
Did you receive any medals or citations?
I had 8 air medals and some, variety of Vietnam combat ribbons and citations, and the Navy Commendation, and then I had 3 Legions of Merits and 2 Meritorious Service medals. I wanted to have the chance to end with talking about the importance of service, the importance of people having a sense of what you did and just learning from history and that kind of thing, why it mattered so much to you. And Bill, I'll let you speak to that first a little bit. I would say one thing: if all of you got a vision out there, you got a mission, you got a career. I knew I wanted to be a fighter pilot, like I said, 10 years old. But it took me 7 years to get through college because I was working 3 jobs, and I flunked out a couple times. But I knew I had to get there, and I was hauling trash, cutting trees, delivering papers, digging ditches, and everything else to get what I wanted to do. So no matter what your vision is, stay on top of it and pursue it. What was your other question?
And then in terms of like the importance of hearing stories of history like this.
Oh yeah, I would say very importantly, particularly in this day and age, what's going on in the world. Just don't be focused in Kansas, New Jersey, or wherever you are, Ohio, but focus on what's going on in the world. Look at the international. Figure out what's going on with Afghanistan. Really, you got to pay attention to this because you have no idea when it could affect the United States of America. Because a lot of technology out there, a lot of misnomers, a lot of crazy folks out there, a lot of, idealistics out there that they don't, in my vision, don't go along with a democracy. And if you don't stand up for what you believe in, you can only blame yourself if you see your country going downhill. So get involved, get engaged, stay positive, and support what you believe in.
I don't think I can thank you enough. Bill Switzer, thank you very much for your service, and thank you so much for sharing your stories today.